Greetings Warhammer enthusiast. Before you stands a voice assistant of the podcast, dedicated to spreading the greater good. If you find this information useful, please do not hesitate to leave a like and subscribe. Together, we shall explore the depths of the Warhammer universe and share in its wonders. You can find the enthralling previous chapter of this epic tale by following the hint in the upper corner of your screen. Hive Fleet Leviathan and Jormungandr are two menacing Tyranid hive fleets in the Warhammer 40k universe. Leviathan is known for its massive invasions and brutal campaigns, such as the Devastation of Baal. Jormungandr, on the other hand, employs stealthy subterranean tactics to strike unsuspecting worlds. Both hive fleets exemplify the relentless and adaptive nature of the Tyranid threat to the Imperium of Man. Hive Fleet Jormungandr, named after the mythical Norse serpent, emerged as a dangerous and cunning Tyranid force. Though it didn't start as an exceptionally large hive fleet, it quickly gained biomass by preying on unprotected worlds. Jormungandr encircled the Thalassi sector like a gargantuan serpent, and within 2 years of its first attack, it had effectively isolated the entire sector. For 3 months, the Hive Fleet remained dormant in space, defending itself when necessary but otherwise remaining passive. Then, without warning, the coils of Jormungandr began to constrict, signaling the start of its aggressive campaign. Jormungandr employed different tactics than other hive fleets, which often utilized brute force and siege warfare. Instead, its biovessels rarely entered planetary orbits. The Hive Fleet would capture asteroids and space debris, launching them towards targeted worlds along with mycetic spores. This bombardment caused widespread devastation, ensuring a higher proportion of spores reached the planet's surface. Once the spores landed, they unleashed broods of raveners, morlocks, or trigons that immediately burrowed underground and lay dormant, evading detection. The Hive Fleet would then send psychic stimuli to awaken its slumbering forces only when the infestation reached a critical mass, timing the planet-wide destruction with the arrival of its hive ships in orbit. These hive ships would deliver genestealers and carnifexes to the surface to escalate the chaos. Another strategy employed by the Hive Fleet was to use asteroids as armor for its bioships. This tactic not only provided protection but also served as camouflage, enabling the bioships to launch surprise attacks. Recent reports have reached the Imperium of Jormungandr's bioships embedding themselves in drifting comets as well, further demonstrating their adaptability. The hive world of Sephrax stood as the greatest bastion of resistance against the relentless advance of Hive Fleet Jormungandr. Sephrax was already embroiled in a bitter conflict between the planet's militia, loyalists from the Crimson Castellan Space Marine chapter, and a pirate warband led by renegade elements from the same chapter. The world was a tumultuous battlefield, with both factions fighting for dominance and control. When Hive Fleet Jormungandr descended upon Sephrax, the situation changed dramatically. Recognizing the existential threat posed by the Tyranid invasion, both the loyalist and renegade forces put aside their differences and united to combat the alien menace. This unexpected alliance managed to significantly slow Jormungandr's assimilation of Sephrax, as they fought side by side to repel the Tyranid swarm. Despite their valiant efforts, the defenders of Sephrax faced a daunting challenge in combating the Tyranids. Morlocks, enormous burrowing creatures, gnawed through the planet's crust, shattering the foundations of hive cities and fortresses. As a result, billions of lives were lost in the ensuing destruction, including the loyalist Crimson Castellan leader Sogian Tyro. While the defenders fought tirelessly to protect Sephrax, they could not halt the Tyranids' relentless advance. The renegade leader, Bloodspite, realizing the futility of continuing the fight, decided to make a strategic withdrawal. He fled to his orbiting asteroid lair, hoping to escape the carnage unfolding on the planet's surface. However, his escape plan was short-lived, as an enormous Tyranid hive ship appeared in orbit and swallowed the asteroid lair whole. Bloodspite's fate was sealed, and his renegade forces were effectively neutralized. The battle for Sephrax serves as a testament to the determination and courage displayed by the combined forces of the planet's militia and the divided Crimson Castellans. While they were ultimately unable to prevent the world's devastation, their united efforts managed to slow down Hive Fleet Jormungandr's advance, and buy precious time for the Imperium to mount a more coordinated response. Hive Fleet Jormungandr made its presence known as it appeared ominously in the skies above the planet Gedron II. Without warning, the Tyranid Hive Fleet unleashed a barrage of thousands of meteors, hurtling them towards the planet's atmosphere. Gedron II's vast redoubt fortresses, which served as protective barriers for the planet's hive cities, managed to intercept and destroy many of these incoming projectiles. The remaining meteors, however, plunged into the ocean, seemingly causing minimal damage to the planet's infrastructure. Believing the worst to be over, Jormungandr's bioships retreated from orbit, prompting the governor of Gedron II to prematurely declare the invasion thwarted. The people of Gedron II were relieved, believing they had survived the Tyranid onslaught with minimal losses. Unbeknownst to them, however, the true nightmare was only just beginning. Several months after the meteor bombardment, a nightmarish scene unfolded within the lower halls of Gedron II's fortifications. Hordes of many-limbed Tyranid creatures, hidden within the meteors that had crashed into the ocean, burst forth from their hiding places and began a brutal slaughter of everyone in their path. These Tyranids had lain dormant, waiting for the opportune moment to strike and catch the planetary defense forces off guard. As the planetary defense forces scrambled to react to this unforeseen invasion, their long-range scanners picked up a chilling sight: a colossal body of Tyranid vessels entering orbit around Gedron II. The initial meteor attack had merely been a precursor, a way to covertly seed the planet with Tyranid forces. Now, with the planet's defenses in disarray and struggling to contain the sudden surge of Tyranid forces, the Hive Fleet was preparing to deliver the final blow. The people of Gedron II were left to confront the grim reality that they had not escaped the Tyranid threat after all. Instead, they had unknowingly allowed the enemy to infiltrate their world and sow the seeds of their destruction. With the full might of Hive Fleet Jormungandr bearing down on them, the defenders of Gedron II faced a desperate and seemingly hopeless battle for their planet's survival. Responding to a garbled distress call from the planet Subterfuge, the Imperial Battlefleet Gammek set course for the beleaguered world, hoping to provide assistance against any potential threat. Upon emerging from the warp, the fleet found itself amidst the wreckage of Subterfuge's once mighty orbital shipyards. Surprisingly, there were no signs of Tyranid vessels in the vicinity, just scores of large asteroids and scattered debris from the destroyed shipyards. With the situation appearing less dire than initially assumed, the Imperial ships continued their approach, cautiously navigating through the asteroid field. It was then that their tactical officers detected something amiss: movement within the clusters of rock. The Tyranid Hive Fleet Jormungandr had cleverly concealed its bioships amidst the asteroid field, using the debris as protective shells and hiding in plain sight. As the unsuspecting Imperial fleet ventured deeper into the field, the Tyranid bioships revealed themselves and launched a devastating surprise attack. Caught off guard, Battlefleet Gammek found itself in the midst of a lethal storm of biological missiles and hurled meteoroids. The Tyranid ambush had been perfectly executed, leaving the Imperial fleet no time to mount an effective defense or counterattack. With their defenses overwhelmed and their ships crippled by the relentless Tyranid assault, the situation for Battlefleet Gammek quickly turned dire. Despite their best efforts, not a single Imperial ship managed to escape the deadly ambush. In the cold void of space, the wreckage of Battlefleet Gammek joined the debris of Sarposa's shipyards. The forge world of Megaia was a bastion of the Imperium's might, housing sacred manufactorum complexes and an array of arcane weaponry. As Hive Fleet Jormungandr descended upon the world, the garrison Imperial Guard regiments prepared to defend their home with fierce determination. Megaia's defenders wielded a plethora of experimental and blessed weapons, including thermal cannons, pulverizer whips, shatterstorm rifles, and more. In an attempt to keep the Tyranid swarm at bay, massive force pylons were erected around the manufactorums. However, the cunning Tyranids circumvented this defense by burrowing through Megaia's armor-plated crust to destroy the pylons from below. Undeterred, the defenders continued to fight, unleashing a torrent of firepower upon the invading swarm. Megaia's last hope lay in the mighty titans of the Legio Annihilator. These colossal war machines managed to achieve a brief victory against the relentless Tyranids, but the respite was short-lived. Jormungandr responded by unleashing a new, gargantuan threat upon the battlefield, a creature resembling a Trigon but with the size of a Reaver Titan and a fanged maw dripping with acidic venom. The enormous Tyranid beast tore through the ranks of the Legio Annihilator with terrifying ease, effortlessly dodging the barrage of fire aimed at it. Ultimately, it was the massive cannons of the Basilica Mechanicus that managed to bring the behemoth down. However, in its death throes, the creature's convulsions shattered great chunks of the Basilica's walls, opening the complex to hordes of raveners. With their defenses breached and the Legio Annihilator in tatters, the fate of Megaia was sealed. The Tyranid swarm poured into the heart of the Forge world, overwhelming its defenders and consuming its vast resources. This hard-fought battle demonstrated the relentless adaptability of Hive Fleet Jormungandr, and the lengths it would go to ensure its conquest of the galaxy. Admiral Vortigern Hanroth, a seasoned commander, assembled a formidable fleet to face Hive Fleet Jormungandr. His armada included not only the finest vessels from the renowned dockyards of Bacca and Sodramund, but also space marine battle barges and an eclectic mix of ships from smaller worlds. These diverse vessels ranged from Vesalian slavebirds and Cimmeriac shadow cruisers to Donorati thunderprows. The fleet even featured a pair of demiurge commerce vessels and a few ships not seen since the ruin of Golgotha. Despite the impressive array of ships, Hanroth's fleet faced a significant challenge, maintaining cohesion among the diverse and often fractious assortment of vessels. However, the Imperial fleet at the heart of Hanroth's force was as disciplined and experienced as any in the Imperium. With Jormungandr bloated with biomatter from its previous conquests, Hanroth led his fleet into the heart of the swarm from the bridge of the Grand Cruiser Crusade. Telepathica officers bravely risked their sanity to identify crucial node ships within the hive mind synapse web. These were targeted and destroyed by concentrated volleys from the Crusade and its escort vessels. In a bold move, Space Marine strike teams from the Death Spectre's chapter boarded larger hive ships, fighting in brutal close-quarters combat. Through these combined efforts, Jormungandr was gradually torn apart, its seemingly unstoppable advance halted by the determined Imperial force. Nevertheless, the victory came at a great cost, as the relentless Tyranid swarm destroyed 3/4 of Hanroth's fleet. The Admiral's perseverance and tactical acumen, coupled with the bravery and sacrifice of his crew, ultimately saved countless worlds from the ravages of Hive Fleet Jormungandr. Although Hive Fleet Jormungandr was ultimately destroyed, its impact on the galaxy would be felt long after its defeat. There were two primary lasting influences of Jormungandr's incursion. The first was psychological. Jormungandr's invasion path extended considerably further north in the galaxy than any previous Hive fleet, forcing all defenders of the galaxy to remain vigilant across their borders, not just those on the eastern rim. This realization brought a new level of anxiety and concern to the already beleaguered Imperium. The second influence was far more tangible. Thousands of Jormungandr's offspring lay dormant beneath the soil of countless worlds, biding their time until the right moment to awaken and wreak havoc. Even a decade after the Hive fleet's destruction, the Imperium only had a vague understanding of the true extent of the devastation Jormungandr had wrought. These remnants of Jormungandr would continue to plague the Imperium well into the Third Tyrannic War. Having lain dormant since their defeat, they were roused once more with the invasion of Hive Fleet Leviathan. The imperial world of Obliterax suffered the most severe consequences of this resurgence. As the Tyranid forces awoke and emerged from their subterranean lairs, they launched a devastating assault on the unsuspecting population. Caught off guard and overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the Tyranid onslaught, the defenders of Obliterax were unable to mount a successful resistance. Eventually, the entire population of the planet was consumed by the ravenous swarms of Tyranids. The legacy of Hive Fleet Jormungandr serves as a stark reminder of the relentless and ever-present threat posed by the Tyranids. Even in the wake of apparent victory, the Imperium must remain vigilant, as the danger of these insidious creatures could resurface at any time. The combined strength and determination of the Imperium's defenders will be crucial in the ongoing struggle against the encroaching Tyranid menace. Hive Fleet Leviathan, the largest and most formidable Tyranid hive fleet to invade the galaxy from the galactic south. Diverging from the strategies of most previous hive fleets, which typically attacked from the eastern fringe, Leviathan skirted beneath the galactic rim and then surged upwards through the galactic plane. It spread its forces across a wide front, encompassing the Ultima Segmentum, Segmentum Tempestus, and even reaching into the Segmentum Solar. The Imperium suddenly lost contact with multiple systems within the Segmentum Tempestus. Inquisitor Kryptman, renowned for his expertise on Tyranids, conducted a massive astrotelepathic survey, later known as the Kryptman Census. He established contact with every documented planet on the southern fringe of the Imperium in an attempt to discern the cause of the communication blackout. As the non-responsive worlds began to form a discernible pattern, Kryptman realized that an approaching hive fleet of immense size was responsible for the communication breakdown. Hive Fleet Leviathan's primary attack strategy involved two tendrils, each hundreds of light-years apart. The Imperium lost contact with the worlds caught between these two jaws, and as the jaws threatened to close, the planets trapped within faced the prospect of total annihilation. The Hive Fleet's strategic deployment of its forces created the shadow in the warp, effectively severing all psychic communication and hindering the Imperium's ability to send reinforcements to the beleaguered worlds. Realizing the severity of the situation, the Imperium scrambled to devise a plan to counter the impending doom wrought by Leviathan's jaws. The gravity of the situation necessitated the collaboration of various Imperial factions, including the Adeptus Astartes, the Imperial Guard, and the Inquisition, to devise strategies to halt the Hive Fleet's advance and rescue the planets caught within its grip. This Herculean effort required the mobilization of vast military forces, the reinforcement of key strategic locations, and the willingness to make sacrifices to safeguard the Imperium's worlds. In the path of one of Leviathan's main tendrils, the planet Tarsis Ultra was under threat. This tendril was on a course towards Terra, making the defense of Tarsis Ultra critical. The Ultramarines, led by Captain Uriel Ventris, defended the planet along with the Mortifactors led by Chaplain Astador. They were supported by the 10th Logres led by Colonel Octavius Rebellac, the 933rd Death Corps of Krieg led by Colonel Trimon Stageler, and PDF regiments headed by Major Satria. Inquisitor Kryptman, an expert on the Tyranids, was also present to assist in the war effort. As the Tyranids arrived in the system and consumed the planet Barbarous Prime, the Imperials launched an attack in space. Although they achieved an initial victory by destroying a hive ship, Inquisitor Kryptman proposed invoking Exterminatus on the world of Cordelis, which lay in the path of the Tyranids. His goal was to prevent the Tyranids from devouring the planet and swelling their numbers, since planetary evacuation was deemed too slow. Captain Ventress disagreed with Kryptman's decision, and supported Admiral Tiberius's alternative solution to slow down the Tyranids by detonating a hydrogen plasma refinery in space, thereby destroying another hive ship. However, Kryptman had deceived Ventress and, with the assistance of the Mortifactors, invoked Exterminatus on Cordelis, despite the Ultramarines' plan succeeding. The Imperials attempted to use the same tactic with a second space refinery to destroy another hive ship, but the Tyranids adapted to this strategy. The plan backfired on the Imperials, crippling their fleet and forcing the survivors to flee. Tarsis Ultra was left unprotected from space, allowing the Tyranids to launch their final planetary invasion. During the Tyranid attacks on Tarsis Ultra, Ventress and a Deathwatch team captured a Lictor. This proved pivotal in the war, as Kryptman was able to create a venom from the Lictor's genetic structure that would send an early generation Tyranid into hyper-evolution, killing the creature. They then decided to kill the Norn Queen in order to win the war. Ventress joined the Deathwatch team in infiltrating the final remaining hive ship to kill the last Norn Queen controlling the Tyranids. Ventress ultimately managed to kill the last Norn Queen using Kryptman's gene poison. The remaining Space Marine contingent from both the Ultramarines and Mortifactors was down to 16 men when the Tyranids started to attack each other. This occurred as the link with the hive mind was lost upon the death of the last Norn Queen. The psychic shockwave from the Overmind's death caused the Tyranids to slaughter each other senselessly, leaving the Imperials alone. The majority of the Tyranids froze to death under the harsh conditions of Tarsis Ultra, while a minority survived by taking refuge in warmer surroundings. Though the Tyranid invasion of the Tarsis Ultra system was repelled, it didn't significantly impact Leviathan's overall invasion of the Eastern Fringe. The Imperium's victory, however, was short-lived due to the events that followed. Captain Ventress and his companion Lysane were reported to their chapter for breaking with the Codex Astartes, because of their questionable actions during the conflict, such as abandoning their company to lead the Deathwatch team. As a result, they were both exiled from the Ultramarines on a death oath. Lurchus Abance took over as acting captain of the 4th Company and supervised the grim task of rebuilding the company's losses. The situation worsened when Warsmith Hun Su, Ventress's enemy, vengefully followed Ventress's path back to Tarsis Ultra after Ventress and Lysane narrowly escaped from the Iron Warrior's home planet of Medrengard. In an act of retribution, Hun Su destroyed Tarsis Ultra through a combination of orbital bombardment and bio-warfare. The planet was left as a lifeless, airless rock, and it remains unknown if any of the survivors from the battle against the Tyranids were able to escape the planet's destruction. Despite the successful defense of Tarsis Ultra, the rest of Hive Fleet Leviathan continued to ravage the galaxy. Inquisitor Kryptman, in an effort to slow the Tyranids' advance, ordered the establishment of a Galactic Cordon. This strategy required a band of worlds in Leviathan's path to be evacuated, and in many cases, razed to the ground to deny the Tyranids any bioresources. Worlds already under invasion were subjected to exterminatus just as the Tyranids descended to feed upon them, causing the Tyranids to expend resources without gaining anything in return. Kryptman Cordon, however, came at a tremendous cost. Billions of imperial citizens were condemned to death in what was the single largest act of genocide upon the Imperium since the Horus Heresy. This drastic measure sparked outrage among many influential inquisitors, who labeled Kryptman a radical, traitor, and fool. The Inquisition ultimately issued a Carta Extremis, stripping Kryptman of his title and reducing him to the status of a criminal. Despite the controversy surrounding Kryptman's actions, his cordon did achieve its intended goal. It slowed Hive Fleet Leviathan's advance to a crawl, allowing time for Battlefleet Solar and Battlefleet Tempestus to muster their forces in preparation for further engagements with the Tyranids. Despite being cast out of the Inquisition, Kryptman decided to harness the Tyranid swarm and turn it against the galaxy's other enemies. He planned to use a tendril of Leviathan to eliminate the Orc Empire of Octarius, as the Imperium was mired in an ever-escalating war against Octarius, a conflict that the Orcs were dominating. Kryptman led several specially equipped Deathwatch teams into the caverns of Carpathia to capture a brood of live genestealers in a stasis field. The mission was successful, although Kryptman's force suffered heavy casualties. Kryptman then planted the captured genestealer brood aboard the Perdition's Flame, a space hulk that emerged from the warp in Leviathan's path. As the genestealers awoke, he destroyed the moon of Geist to divert the hulk's trajectory directly towards the Octarius Empire. Despite the Orcs' efforts to eliminate the genestealer infestation, a tendril of Leviathan changed course towards the psychic signal of the genestealers and invaded the Empire. Within weeks, a dozen worlds in the Octarius Empire became infected. Leviathan's advance was nearly halted by the Orcs at Garala, as they countered the invading Tyranid fleet with a massive Orc fleet and extensive minefields hidden amongst Garala's asteroid belt. The Tyranids suffered significant losses, but a single bioship managed to break through the Orc blockade and launch thousands of mycetic spores onto the planet's equatorial plains. On the surface, the Tyranids adapted their tactics to slowly gather more bioresources and increase their numbers. When the Orc leader Scarfang was killed by lictors, the Orcs on Garala descended into infighting and became easy prey for the Tyranids. Within weeks, all the Orcs on Garala had been killed, and the planet's bioresources were used to create new bioships for the Tyranid fleet. The war eventually spread to Octarius, the central world of the Orc Empire, leading to unprecedented levels of bloodshed and soon encompassing the entire Octarius sector. Other Orc worlds lost to the Tyranids include Auric, Deragon, and Kelta. The Octarius War continues to escalate, with recent reports indicating that the Tyranid Swarmlord has joined the assault on the Orcs of Octarius. At first, Kryptman's plan to have both xenos species destroy each other seemed successful. However, his plan ultimately backfired. Orcs from light years away are flocking to Octarius, growing bigger and stronger on their diet of conflict. Simultaneously, every Orc devoured provides more biomass for the growing Tyranid swarm, which is continually learning and adapting new ways to defeat their foes. Kryptman inadvertently set in motion a series of events that is making both sides stronger, and whichever race wins the war will emerge more powerful than before. The Blood Angels, having sacrificed numerous worlds in the Kryptos system to slow the Tyranids' advance, prepared for the defense of their homeworld, Baal. The Tyranid fleet from Hive Fleet Leviathan was so massive that even after sustaining considerable losses, it still obscured the stars in the sky. Commander Dante fortified Baal's defenses and waited for the Tyranid onslaught. Despite the impending invasion, Dante employed proactive strategies to delay, deceive, and weaken the Tyranid armada, successfully defeating hundreds of splinter fleets in the process. Fortunately, the Blood Angels were joined by several successor chapters, including the Flesh Tearers, Blood Drinkers, Carmine Blades, and the Knights of Blood. The combined force, consisting of nearly 30,000 Space Marines, was the largest gathering of sanguineous bloodline since the Horus Heresy. These forces were distributed among Baal, its moons Baal Secundus and Baal Primus, and aboard warships and orbital defense stations. The Tyranids' arrival was heralded by the Shadow in the Warp, a series of seismic and psychic disturbances. The Xenos first encountered the formidable Space Marine fleet defending Baal, consisting of 21 battle barges, 94 strike cruisers, and hundreds of smaller vessels divided into 4 battle groups under Blood Angel's master of the fleet Bellerophon. However, the Tyranid force was overwhelming, with more than 50,000 bioships. The sky above Baal erupted in a firestorm as the Space Marine fleet engaged the Tyranids, launching nuclear-tipped warheads that inflicted massive losses on the enemy. Despite the impressive display, the Space Marines' situation was hopeless. Their vessels were gradually isolated and overrun by Tyranid forces, with bioships battering them with organic missiles and swarms of smaller ships. The entire Angels Excelsis chapter was wiped out, and the Second Tyranid fleet, comprising tens of thousands more bioships, emerged from behind Baela. The remnants of the Astartes fleet were helpless as this force began landings on Baal and its 2 moons. As the ground war began, the Blood Angels and their allies fought valiantly, employing hit-and-run tactics, fortified positions, and coordinated counterattacks to hold off the Tyranids. However, they faced overwhelming odds, and their situation grew increasingly desperate. With the fall of Baal seemingly imminent, Dante sent out a distress signal, calling for aid from any nearby Imperial forces. Despite the bleak circumstances, the defenders of Baal continued their struggle against the relentless Tyranid invasion, hoping for reinforcements to arrive in time to turn the tide of the battle. The Imperials established a 3-layer defensive line to protect Baal, comprising Space Marines, heavy cannon batteries, a moat filled with thirst water, and a large number of Baalite conscripts brutally held in place by chaplains. Despite facing 19 increasingly larger Tyranid waves, the Imperial forces managed to hold their ground, thanks in part to the Arx Angelicum's Void Shield array, which protected them from heavy artillery and flying Tyranid organisms. The Tyranids eventually managed to cross the thirst water moat by using their own bodies as a bridge, allowing larger Tyranid warriors, carnifexes, and exocrines to advance. This breach led to the fall of the first defensive line, and the Space Marines provided cover for the retreating mortal conscripts back to the Arx Angelicum. However, the Tyranids were still unable to penetrate the Void Shield, prompting the Hive Mind to adapt its strategy. A lictor behind Imperial lines discovered a derelict tunnel deep beneath the fortress monastery, which was subsequently torn open by Trigons. The lictor and a large number of Genestealers infiltrated the fortress, targeting the hall containing the sarcophagi of neophytes undergoing insanguination. The attack enraged the Space Marines, and Dante himself led the counterattack to save their next generation of warriors. Meanwhile, the lictor disabled the Void Shield generator, allowing the Tyranids to overrun the fortress. During the desperate battle, 5 chapter masters lost their lives, including 3 in the Dome of Angels alone. On Baal Secundus, Gabriel Seth and his Flesh Tearers defended the Blood Angels' aspirant training facilities, while the Carmine Blades held the Astropathic Station. Initially, the Space Marines managed to hold their ground due to formidable, recommissioned Horus Heresy-era fortifications and weaponry. However, the tide turned in favor of the Tyranids when the Swarmlord joined the battle. Dante was able to slay the Swarm Lord but suffered severe injuries in the process. As Baal and its moons were overwhelmed, the Tyranids began draining the worlds, absorbing even the rat-poisoned desert of Baal Secundus. The defenders were forced to retreat to the Blood Angels' fortress monastery. Despite the intervention of the Sanguiner, the situation for the defenders of Baal was dire, and the planet seemed on the brink of falling to the Tyranids. Just as the situation seemed dire for the defenders of Baal, the Great Rift formed across the galaxy. The Baal system was engulfed by the powers of the Warp, and demons clashed with the Tyranids. Leading the demons was the vicious bloodthirster Ka-Bandr, the archenemy of the Blood Angels and Sanguinius. Ka-Bandr declared that only he had the right to destroy the Blood Angels. The arrival of the Great Rift and the demons stopped additional Tyranids from reaching the system, but resulted in the death of every defender on Baal Prime. With Baal cut off from the rest of the Imperium, Chapter Masters Dante of the Blood Angels and Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Terrors were forced to retreat, pursued by enemies on all sides. The excommunicated successor chapter, the Knights of Blood, made a noble sacrifice that allowed the survivors to board their vessels and escape, while Baal Prime was overrun by warp-spawned monstrosities. As Seth's forces retreated, they witnessed the Knights of Blood, consumed by the madness of the Black Rage, hurling themselves into close combat with the Tyranids. When all hope seemed lost, the fleet of the Indomitus Crusade, led by the reborn Robout Guilliman, arrived. Guilliman and his forces fought numerous battles to liberate Baal. Hive Fleet Leviathan was mostly destroyed, although the exact details of its demise remain a mystery. On the moon of Baal Prime, a gruesome symbol was discovered. Composed of the skulls of countless fallen Tyranids, it formed the unmistakable likeness of Ka-Bandr. This macabre display served as a grim reminder of the presence and intervention of the Bloodthirster and the forces of chaos. The Angel's Halo campaign began in the aftermath of the devastation of Baal, initiated by Dante with the goal of saving the Red Scar from the remaining tendrils of Leviathan. This involved redeploying the surviving Blood Angels and successor assets to counter the Tyranid threat. One major challenge faced by the Imperials was the Tyranid shadow in the warp, which had intensified to the point of causing madness in even non-augmented Imperial forces such as Guardsmen. Blood Angels librarians strained under the effect amid widespread riots and civil strife across the Red Scar. This was further complicated by the mysterious psychic awakening, which led to a surge in the number of psychers born across the galaxy. As the League of Black Ships could no longer control the growing psyker population, the Blood Angels were forced to use their own librarians to oversee and assess the threat posed by these psychers among the masses of refugees fleeing Leviathan. The hive mind took advantage of this vulnerability, employing psychic beasts on battlefields while Blood Angels librarians were preoccupied with internal threats. Dante's first move in the Angel's Halo campaign involved retaking the rest of the Baal system. He led a squadron of ships to the outer gas giant of Keru, engaging Tyranid swarms on the moons of the gas giant. Meanwhile, Gabriel Seth and the Flesh Terrors targeted three nearby systems known as the Points of Grace, which were intended to serve as staging posts for further expansion. These included the industrial world Ashalon, the Gamma 4 systems linked space stations and orbital platforms, and the fortress world Bellic Alphas. Seth personally led the attack on Ashalon, while Vanguard Space Marines of the Angels in Carmine focused on Gamma 4. The Blood Angels' 5th Company, along with significant chapter reserves under Captain Sendini, launched their assault on Bellic Alphas. Through these coordinated efforts, the Blood Angels and their successor chapters fought to reclaim territory from the Tyranids, and protect the Imperium from the ever-evolving threat of Hive Fleet Leviathan.
Recognizing the danger posed by the ever-evolving remnants of Leviathan, Lord Commander Robout Guilliman has taken decisive action to bolster the defenses of Segmentum Solar. He has ordered the reinforcement of key strategic positions, and dispatched several primary Space Marine chapters to the front lines of the Tyrannic Wars. These newly founded chapters, equipped with advanced technology and gene-enhanced warriors, are intended to tip the balance in the Imperium's favor against the Tyranids. The primary Space Marines have been deployed to engage the Tyranids across numerous war zones, working in concert with the Blood Angels and their successors to counter the Xenos threat. These new forces bring with them cutting-edge weaponry, powerful vehicles, and the benefit of specialized training, making them an invaluable addition to the Imperium's ongoing struggle against the Tyranids. The Fourth Tyrannic War marking the beginning of a massive invasion by Hive Fleet Leviathan that targeted the western reaches of Segmentum Pacificus. This invasion represented the largest Tyranid incursion into the galaxy to date, posing a significant threat to the Imperium of Man and its already stretched forces. As the Tyranids of Hive Fleet Leviathan swarmed into the western reaches, Imperial worlds found themselves under relentless assault by the voracious xenos. The Imperium's defenders, including numerous Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guard regiments, and other military forces, were mobilized to confront this massive Tyranid invasion. The scale of the conflict was unprecedented, with countless battles waged across numerous star systems as the Tyranids sought to consume all in their path. The Fourth Tyrannic War proved to be a grueling and protracted conflict, with significant losses incurred by both the Imperium and the Tyranids. However, the steadfast determination of the Imperium's defenders, combined with their unwavering faith in the Emperor, served to bolster their resolve in the face of this seemingly insurmountable foe. As the war rages on, the Imperium continues to marshal its forces and develop new tactics to counter the Tyranid menace, determined to protect humanity from the relentless advance of the Xenos invaders.
In the upcoming segment, we'll delve into the intricate details of each Tyranid Hive fleet, revealing their unique characteristics and strategies. Don't miss out on the next thrilling chapter. Click the bell icon now to stay notified for future content.